welcome back to Hudson Auto Films. Today's episode is a big one. It is a very exciting moment. First and foremost, I get a moustache. And almost as exciting as that, we are attempting to restore the chassis. This is the rustiest chassis I have ever worked on. A lot of you said it shouldn't be fixed. A lot of you said it couldn't be fixed. And well, in today's episode, we are going to try and do just that. So let's do this thing. So it's a little bit sobering that this is all that's left of our Nova chassis. The decades of abandonment really did take their toll, but luckily the core structure, which is in the central tube, is good, so there's some hope. But before we can think about adding any new metal, we need to get a few things out the way and clean up our mating surfaces so, well, we don't have this problem all over again. Well, that's one way to do it. This is the correct way to use a spanner, isn't it? And there's the lesson, never to use a drill bit in place of a split pin. They're annoying to get out. Wow, that's the second longest shaft I've seen today. As always, a storm is coming. This does sum up England. Happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad. With all the remaining parts out the way and the storm rolling through, it was time to get this car, well, not quite a car, this thing inside so we can clean up all of the edges that we are going to be welding to. Whilst I'd been cleaning up the chassis, my friend Steve was modifying the floor pans. You're able to get the floor pans off the shelf, but in Novas they are significantly lower. That's because the roof height is so low, and if we'd kept them standard, well, my head would have been sort of stopping the canopy from closing, which would have been less than ideal. So Steve kindly lowered the floor pans a whole 11 centimetres, which should give us all the height we need. And with the rain continuing to hammer down, the first pieces of clean metal to grace the Nova in probably over 40 years had arrived. And along with our brand new floors, I also bought a brand new frame head, because the one on the Nova currently was crusty beyond safe repair. Now, welding the floors wouldn't be terribly hard. Getting them to sit right is probably the trickiest bit, but the frame head on the other hand was a much more daunting task, but we'll get to that later. But I have to say, seeing all the nice new metal next to our poor, sad old chassis felt really good. In just a few days, this would be strong again. It would have a future again, after being completely forgotten. Now, with our new panels raring to be fitted, it was time to clean up the mating surfaces on the chassis so we could get these nice and cleanly welded on. And now with the mating surfaces back to nice, shiny, gleaming metal, it was time to give them a bit of protection. This is my new favourite primer. It's this high in copper etch weld through primer. It's really nice. It looks cool, smells nice. Not that I've been smelling it, I promise. And yeah, hopefully it should keep that rust away. If you're wondering why we are just cleaning up the mating surfaces, that is because there is no point cleaning up the rest of the chassis until all the new metal is in. At this point in time, what's important is we've got new metal going onto nice, clean metal, so we'll get good welds. Then, once all of the fabrication and welding is done, we can deal with cleaning up the rest of the chassis. And once the whole thing is gleaming, we can seal it all up once and for all in one go, minimising any sort of contamination and flashing, all that sort of thing. But now the moment had come, time to put these new floors in. And you always hope new panels will just slot into place, but the truth is no classic car is the same as the next. Over the years they twist, they change shape, so you always need to do a bit of careful modification. But after a bit of fiddling, they were starting to look pretty good, and this tired old chassis was starting to take shape again. We then secured the floor panel in place so it didn't move out of shape when the welding began. And in typical fashion, as we perfectly aligned the rear of the floor pan, the front moved out of line. So with the ratchet strap, we made it true and got it secured in place. And with one last final cleanup, the time had come. Let's weld this floor in. After Steve did the honours, it was my turn. Now, I can't say I'm good at welding at the best of times, but this was a stick welder, and I'd never used one of those before, so this should be interesting. Well, that was a good start. Now, if you're wondering why we're using a stick welder, it's for a few reasons. Mainly because we are in the middle of nowhere without a reliable power supply, so we can use this just using a battery unit. And for those who may be curious or concerned, what are the pros and cons of stick welding? Well, the pros are it's very strong and relatively easy to do. And even though it may not be the most elegant of methods, you have to remember that much of Great Britain over the last 100 years has been constructed using stick welding, and most of the buildings are still standing up, so for the sake of our chassis, it should be good enough. On the cons though, even though it may be easy to pick up, it's quite hard to master, and it can be quite messy if you're not an expert, so the cleanup might be a little bit more, and you might not be left with the prettiest of welds. But we powered on, and in not too long, the floor pan was in. With one down, there was one more to go. This side actually fitted up a lot better and gave us a lot less grief on the fitment side. And by this point I'd also realised the welder was probably in safer hands with Steve. But it was quite fun. Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. But this does seem like a good moment to say, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. According to the stats, only about 20% of you watching are currently subscribed to this channel. The more people who subscribe, the more silly cars I can buy and attempt to save, which I think ultimately is a good thing. But on a serious note, I work so hard on these videos, and if you are enjoying, it would really mean a lot if you did subscribe or check out the other social medias. Everything is under Hudson Auto Films. We've got lots of fun to come. This Nova is just the beginning. It's going to be a fun ride. It was a new day, and it was time to see if the chassis had survived overnight, which amazingly, it had. I cleaned up all the welds and everything looked pretty good. The floor pans were certainly not going anywhere. And after removing all the slag and having a nice little clean up, it was time to protect these welds with, again, my favourite new primer. And with everything nicely protected, it was time to do a very technical test. And with that, part 1 of the chassis restoration, mission complete. But what was next was a much bigger task, the head section. Not only do we have to make sure the new piece is welded on with the utmost strength, we have to make sure it is precisely measured, or the car won't drive in a straight line. We needed to get as many measurements as possible, both with the front axle on and with it off. The more data we had, the better off we would be putting the new one on. Using a plank of wood and some axle stands, we set the car at a fixed height. We then picked our points that we'd be measuring from and to, and it was time to pull out the tape measure. And with the first technical drawing complete, it was time to get this front axle off. And with the front axle out the way, it was time to take even more measurements. What made this even more tricky is the dimensions of the original frame head were marginally different from the remanufactured frame head. Now, this is almost a given when you're purchasing remanufactured parts, and it just means you have to be even more diligent when measuring up. Another tricky thing is there's no such thing as a perfect measurement. With classic cars, they are all built within tolerances, so no car rolled off the production line exactly the same as the next. And then, after 50 or 60 years of life, as I mentioned earlier, the chassis, they bend, they twist, they change shape, so every car is completely different. So even though we are taking as many measurements as we can, who knows how true this chassis is? But regardless, we are doing our best and it will still drive in a straight line, that I can promise you. And with all our measurements logged, the moment of truth had come. It was time to behead our chassis. Oof, this was a daunting moment. We were in very deep. And with the chassis seeming to have birthed a huge amount of rust and crust, let me show you what's lurking inside. It might be hard to tell, but it's not actually too bad in there. Most of these rust from the inside out, but this one seems to have rusted from the outside and not really made it to the inside yet, which is really good. But even though it's good, further down the line we definitely will be investing in one of the many chemicals that you can spray inside your chassis just to give it that extra bit of strength and protection against the future. But before we can even think about that excitement, it's time to clean up the mating surfaces for our new frame head. Then, once the remnants of the top half were free, we flipped the whole chassis over so we could get to the last few spot welds. Now, I bet you there is some rust lurking in there. Let's take a look. Ooh, lovely. And after cleaning up all of the dirt and grime that had found its way into the Napoleon's hat, it was time to make a few small repairs and test fit this frame head. It definitely needed a little bit of persuading. But before we tacked it into place properly, it was time to protect the metal we had just cleaned up. And yet again, with the help of some roofing screws, it was time to test fit it. Right now, all we're doing is tacking it into place, allowing us to flip the car back over, roll it back inside, put it into our fixed position on those axle stands and re-measure. Once we got it inside, the first thing we did was fine-tune the height. Using the jack, we tilted it up until it matched the measurement of the original frame head from the floor to the base of the frame head. Once we were happy with the height, it was time to go over all of the measurements we had taken before. We were close, but not perfect, so we needed to make a few adjustments. And then, after endless small adjustments, we were right where we needed to be. So, it was time to put our first tack in. Removing our support screw, and one final measure, we were happy. So, time to clean this thing up and get it welded properly. And after getting both the top and the bottom of the frame head welded on, it was time to do the very technical test yet again. This was a huge sigh of relief and a huge moment for the build. We had new floors in and we had a new frame head. This chassis, which just a couple of days ago was in a complete dire state, was now solid again. It was almost ready to receive a car. And with that, what's even more crazy to think about is the state of the car just a few weeks ago. It had been left abandoned for over 20 years, and now, well, it was far from that. Whilst the car was upside down, we proceeded to weld the floor pans on from underneath as well for extra strength. So this was welded from the top and the bottom all the way around, and it was rock solid. And then, as a nice final touch, I drenched it in my favourite copper primer. By the time this car is done, it'll weigh as much in copper primer as it does metal, but hopefully it won't rust. The final job of the day was to seam seal the whole chassis. Well, at least all the seams. The last thing I want is any more rust forming on this car, so I'm going to do my absolute best to clean everything up, protect it, and stop any water, moisture, anything getting into this chassis. Ah, the magic juice. There are much more precise and delicate ways of applying seam sealer. You can tape areas off, lay it down, pull the tape away, and you're left with a lovely, clean, protected seam. But in this case, I thought, well, I just want to put on as much as possible, nice and thick. This isn't going to be seen, I just want it to be nice and protected. As the rain was pouring down, this was a lovely way to end a very productive session on the Nova. She was coming back to life and well on the way to being enjoyed for many, many years to come. Mask has left a bit of a mark on my face. not talking about that bad boy. But if you're wondering why I put quite a lot of seam sealer on, well, this is why. England. England! Oh, cock, my car window's open. Okay, so it has been a very big and productive session on the Nova build. It's crazy to think that just 2 weeks ago, this was in a completely awful state, and now it's strong, it's solid, it's ready to be presented to the Nova once again. And another thing is I've seam sealed it now, basically to avoid us getting loads of the rust dust in the seams. So basically, hopefully what will happen is we'll clean all of that up, it'll make a huge amount of mess, it won't go anywhere hard to reach, then we can clean everything up, paint it, it's sealed in for good. And also in that session, we are going to get new suspension, new bushes, clean up everything, so it will be a gleaming, restored chassis. I know lots of you suggested things like sandblasting, and even though that would be great, it's just not in budget at this point in time. And also you'll just have to believe me, what is left is really strong metal. As I said, it might be ugly, but it is just surface rust. And as always on this channel, it's about showing what you can do with a small budget. I don't have many tools, about 5 or 6 in total. That is actually ridiculous to think about. So what is next other than the chassis restoration? Well, engines. A decision has been made, an engine has been selected, and there's been lots of trials and tribulations to get to this point, but that is for next week. So I cannot wait to show you the engine that is going into this thing. I think it will just about please everyone from the purists to those who wanted something crazy. It is the perfect balance of all. Please also consider following my other social media platforms. They're linked down below, or they are under Hudson Auto Films everywhere. No dots, no underscores, just Hudson Auto Films. There's loads of cool additional content on those, and as a lot of you know, loads of my content is being stolen and posted everywhere, and I'm now trying to sort of populate other social media platforms to compete. So also, if you do see any of the content which isn't under one of my handles, please do comment and try and get people to come over to the original source. If you'd like to support the channel further, my Patreon is linked down below. Over on the Patreon, we have loads of behind the scenes access, day-to-day updates on the builds, what's happening a few days before the episodes come out, sort of a way to get involved a bit deeper in decisions, all of that sort of thing. And we are obviously going to be starting a build series on the Patreon exclusively soon. I also have Hudson Auto merchandise linked down below. You guys have been doing a great job at buying the t-shirts, and now with winter coming, hoodies are now in stock. But anyway, enough of all of that. I'm just grateful that you are here watching. Thank you all so much, and until next week, take care, and I will see you then.